maybe if you feel that urge that there's something more and that's why you're trying and you're searching, it's not that diagnosis, it's that internally in your subconscious, you're not content because you haven't found that lane you're supposed to be in. And you are the type of person that needs to find that. Not everybody does. Hello and welcome to another episode of Life Design Plus, where we are mastering the art of living your authentic life. It's the third Thursday of the month, which means now it's time for a solo episode. I hope you enjoyed the first two episodes of the month with Lindsay Bell and Tyrone Ross. If you've not watched those yet, if you're watching this on YouTube, head on down to the Life Design Plus playlist, watch those. If you're listening to this on the podcast, head over, make sure you listen to those. And if you haven't subscribe today so you don't miss out on these, because I have some surprises coming. We have a bonus episode this month. Next week will be the regular book report, but I have a bonus episode. February happens to have 5 Thursdays, and I just lucked out to have an awesome conversation with somebody I'll reveal later on. And also I have a podcast that I had been doing with my dad on All About Your Benjamins that we're going to bring over to Life Design Plus, as we have changed the subject matter of it, less about retirement, more about life conversations. So there will be a new podcast show coming on here. If you've listened to All About Your Benjamins, you will be familiar with that show and my dad. Everybody loves him. His shows get better downloads and views than mine, so I'm excited about bringing that over to the Life Design Plus podcast. But that's not what today is about. Today is about discontentment. And I'm not sure if you really have thought about the term discontentment, what it means, and how to identify it. And truthfully, there's probably different definitions of what discontentment means to everybody. So as I try to disclaim a lot of times when I'm talking to groups, especially younger people who are looking to others for advice and for guidance and for direction on where it is that they're going in their lives, this is just my experience with discontentment and learning from it. Not to say that what I'm about to tell you is exactly right and what will be the truth for you, but it might help you. And that's all my goal is on these solo episodes, is to share some of my perspective and what I've learned on my pursuit with you to maybe help you figure things out just a little bit sooner. So discontentment is I think of something where discontentment does not mean you're unhappy. And maybe you think unhappiness and discontentment are connected, but my definition of discontentment is not. And the reason I say this is I look back on my pursuit, and there was a period of time where I was discontent and I didn't know it. And the reason I didn't know is because I wasn't unhappy. So if we go back in time, and through my career as a financial advisor, making multiple stops, there was a significant amount of time that I spent my career. Crazy to think I've spent more time out of this company than while I was in it, because for a long period of time, it was the bulk of my career. But I was working at a 403B company, and then I went and worked at an independent firm in town. This story is out all over a bunch of podcasts, so I won't share all those details. But when I left the independent firm and started my own company, that is when I feel like I was experiencing discontentment. And the funny thing is, the discontentment came at the place where I had the absolute most freedom, to where I probably shouldn't be discontent. When I worked at the 403B company, there were lots of limitations there with what I could do. For the first few years, I was still learning how to be a financial advisor. And for the last handful of years, I was thinking about how can I build this business to be something that might follow me somewhere else, because I know staying at this corporate firm is not what's going to be the best for me long-term or for my clients. But there was a lot of constraints there. But I didn't think I was discontent. And I think it's because I was learning and figuring things out. So for that period of time, there was no need for me to want more other than just get more experience, meet more people, figure out what it's like to really be a financial advisor, and then figure out a game plan for leaving. And same thing when I was at the independent firm. But when I started RLS Wealth and had all the flexibility and freedom in the world, that is when discontentment began to come into my life. And again, I didn't know it. And the way that discontentment manifested in my life, which may be helpful for you, is that I spent a lot of time doing a lot of things. And I would attribute this to when I started writing a blog. So when I started All About Your Benjamins, something inside of me clicked. That's really when I became entrepreneurial. That's really when I became creative and became a creator that I'd never done before in my life. And as I began to experience this new version of myself, the entrepreneur who could see problems and then figure out ways to go try to solve them. And creator, where I have things I want to say, I have things I want to create, there's a lot of freedom there. And once I started to tap into that, I learned new things and I wanted to learn more. So if you look back over, you go to All About Your Benjamins and then scroll through the feed, you can see a little bit of my journey of trying to figure out who I was as a creator, the style of writing, the subject matter of writing. And then, the podcast came to be out of it. And again, that was something that just came because I really enjoyed listening to Patrick O'Shaughnessy's Invest Like the Best. And I thought, that would be really cool. It would help me tell my story, and it would allow me to meet really cool people because now they have a reason to talk to me, come on my podcast. And so, tapping into that, writing led to podcasting, led to video, led to enjoying editing, learning how to edit my podcast and do all of these things. And that wasn't the end of this, exploration and trying new things. Then it became, I'm going to change who I'm working with. I want to work with entrepreneurs and ultimately create a community for my entrepreneurial clients. Have a building one day that there's a co-working space for the clients of RLS Wealth who are entrepreneurs, give them a place to come together and work, and then see what comes from there. And it was a really exciting business model. And I launched a new blog, The Entrepreneur's Blueprint, a new podcast, The Entrepreneur's Blueprint, the podcast, and went down that path. And then the AGC came to be. So the AGC is the community of financial advisors that I co-founded with Taylor Schulte, another financial advisor. Shout out to Taylor. And that pulled me away from the entrepreneurial path for clients and moved me towards helping build a community for entrepreneurial and, abundant-minded financial advisors. So the community is growing, RLS Wealth is growing, my content creation is growing, and then I go spend time at a startup. And then I'd leave the startup. And when I look back over all of that, and the point of sharing all that with you is the reason for trying all of those things, one, I think was to learn new skills to help me today. So starting a blog, there was nobody to help me. I had to go figure out how to set up a WordPress site, how to get the blog, how to get an RSS feed, how to put it out there, how to market it. I had to figure all of that myself. How to write, because I didn't write before that, and I hadn't really written since college. So how to find my voice, how to write, a skill that I use a lot today, but part of the blog was to figure that out. Same thing with the podcast. I remember watching a series of 6 videos that Pat Flynn put out about how to set up your podcast, how to link it to your WordPress, how to get it into Libsyn, which is hosted, how to get it on Apple, had to figure out later on how to get it on Spotify. All skills that I had to learn, how to edit a podcast. It's not hard, but it's also not easy. And it was a skill that I had to learn, whether that was the technical skills or just the figuring out the problem and not letting that potential issue, if you will, keep me from doing the podcast that I wanted to do. Same thing with video editing, how to edit videos, how to mess with lighting. I'm still trying to figure that out today. There by no means is this new studio set up perfectly. I'm figuring out how to do lighting and watching YouTube videos and trying to figure it out on my own. All skills that are helping me for the future. Now, eventually, I hope to not have to mess with any of this all. I have somebody who does it for me, but I know how to do it if I need to. And when I look back over all of the exploration, periods of time talking about branding and marketing, the reason I was doing all of that was I was internally discontent because I hadn't found my purpose. And it's debatable if everybody has a purpose. There'll be people who say they don't. It's debatable if you should strive to find your purpose. I think you should. And again, this is just one person's opinion. But I didn't realize it at the time that, part of that exploration and doing all of the things was to learn new skills that would be helpful in the future. But part of it was trying to find my thing. And I always knew that I wanted to find something that I could own. I thought it was entrepreneurs. I thought I was working with advisors. I thought I was branding and marketing for advisors and trying all these different things, but none of them ever took because they weren't the right thing. And then as you know, if you listen to this podcast and watch these videos, you get the period of time where there was the burnout, and that's dramatic, but where I realized I was doing too much, focusing on getting back and taking care of myself and prioritizing the things that I want to do the most, brought that alignment of spirit, mind, and body. And then that was when I figured everything out. I don't get to the alignment of spirit, mind, and body as soon as I did if I don't do all of those things. So for me, the discontentment led to exploration and trying new things and probably driving my wife crazy with all my new ideas. because I always tell her about them and she thinks I'm crazy. And, why don't you just keep things the way you are? Why don't you just grow RLS Wealth the way that you've always grown it, which is very, a very viable business. I could have grown the business more. I had an advisor working with me. I had a bigger team. But ultimately, through those experiences and trying those things, I realized that a smaller team, giving me more flexibility, and then finding this alignment of spirit, mind, and body and seeing what it did for me, trying to help more people find that for themselves, and then the concept of the authentic life. So all through that period of trying all of the things, trying to figure out my voice, trying to figure out my lane, I was happy. I mean, all those things that I explored, I enjoyed. That's why I did them. That's why I edit the podcast. That's why I still edit my podcast. I actually enjoy editing the podcast. Can I make the podcast sound good? Can I edit my videos so that when I line up all of the audio, it's perfect? Like, those things for me are fun, and I do those in my off time, if you will, when I would normally be watching TV back in the day. I'm doing things like that. But that discontentment was because I wasn't walking in my authentic life fully. I was being me. So that's part of living your authentic life, is being true to yourself and being who you are. But I hadn't found the path that authentic life was going to be down. So it's a combination of being me and walking comfortably in my skin and, being authentic all of the time, but then also finding that path that is unique and authentic to me. And I wouldn't be able to find it without that wandering. So to me, I was never unhappy. If you would have asked me, are you unhappy? I would have said no. No, I would have told you no. I was enjoying what I was doing. I'm working with great people. My family is healthy. We have enough to live the lifestyle that we want. Nothing was wrong, but I just still wasn't satisfied. And I felt the need to keep exploring interests and passions and go down these different paths. And, now over the last almost 2 years, the path has been narrowed. I'm not all over the place. I'm still doing a lot of things I enjoy, the videos, the podcast, the writing. Those are all things I enjoy. But the subject matter is all one thing. There's no more wandering to figure out what my purpose is. I know what my purpose is for this phase of my authentic life. Finding my lane, I have found it. Bringing spirit, mind, and body to money. Helping people find their authentic life. That's my lane. And everything about it is there. So I think if you compare my past when I was wandering and discontent, all over the place. What is this guy about? Is he about, personal finance? Is he about marketing? Is he branding? Like, what is this guy about? And now I think it's more clear. So I only bring this up, and I'll have some things for you here in a second, some tangible things for you to take away that might help you if you find yourself in the shoes that I was in discontent, happy but discontent, on maybe finding your way and battling that discontent quicker. And the thing that's tough is that, I think discontentment may have a negative, emotion attached to it, or a negative vibe, but it wasn't negative. It just was, for me, it kept me busy trying to satisfy that urge to find the right thing for me. And in the moment, you don't realize that's what it is. You're just following your interests, following your passions, and that's okay. But realize that if you're doing a lot of things and can't seem to find that lane or find that one thing to settle on, you might be battling a little bit of discontentment. And the discontentment is you're not content internally that you are living out your authentic life. And I didn't know that back then, and now I know that. And which is why I think I'm the perfect person to help you find and live your authentic life, because I've been there and I've done that. And now there is no discontentment. I am content with the lane that I'm in. I'm content with knowing my purpose, and I'm content in other areas of my life. And back in the days of wandering, it wasn't a discontent with all of my life. The discontentment really was just focused on my professional life. Is that I know I'm supposed to be helping people. I know I'm a financial advisor, but I just feel like there's something more. And that might be your first clue that what you're battling is not ADHD. And maybe you are, but sometimes when people do a lot of things, they label with ADD or ADHD. So maybe if you feel that urge that there's something more, and that's why you're trying and you're searching, it's not that diagnosis. It's that internally in your subconscious, you're not content because you haven't found that lane you're supposed to be in. And you are the type of person that needs to find that. Not everybody does. As much as I would love for this message to resonate with everybody and be true, I've come to accept that it's not for everybody. And that's okay. And still, if today's message isn't for you, there'll be other messages that may still be for you. But this is for the person that is constantly trying new things, seeking new things out, and you maybe aren't sure why. It might be because you're on that path of finding what it is that you're supposed to be doing to satisfy that subconscious desire to know that you're making an impact on the world the way that only you can. So step one is just realizing, hey, like, I keep on wanting to do all these things. I get these ideas. I'm pursuing them. I'm checking them out. I'm experimenting and finding, what that version of myself is like. That might be the first sign that you're discontent. And just being discontent is not a bad thing. I think finding contentment is a good thing. I don't think discontentment is a bad thing. You can let it get out of control and maybe you end up doing too much like I did. So there could be a quote unquote bad outcome from being discontent. But the feeling of being discontent, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, because it's telling you that you have a desire to do more. You have a desire to make a greater impact. And maybe you have a desire to figure out what is that unique thing that you were created to do that no one else can do as well as you can. And that is the discontentment, is that, and I don't know if this is to be true or not, but I think that my discontentment grew the closer that I got to where I am today. So as I experimented and tried these different things and learned how to communicate, and I started doing the pursuit on All About Your Benjamins, I think it was back in 2019, interviewing people, maybe 2020, interviewing people in the world of finance on things that had nothing to do with finance. I mean, it was called The Pursuit. That was the beginning of the beginning of this phase of all of this stuff. So as I was getting closer to finding that purpose, I think the discontentment grew because my heart and my spirit and my soul knew I was really close. Going back when I mentioned at the 403B company or the independent firm, I wasn't where I was supposed to be, but I don't think the discontentment was really strong because I wasn't close. I wasn't thinking about spirit, mind, body, bringing that to money. I was still thinking about learning the business, getting experience, building a client base to work with for the long term. And that was what I was focused on then. And once those things were established, then it was, okay, now that you have established your business, you have established yourself in the profession, your family's in good shape, your client's in good shape. Now it's time to go next level and increase the impact that I want to have on the world. And now it's experimenting and finding these things to pull me to spirit, mind, body, and money. And as I got closer, the discontentment grew. Again, not unhappiness, but I will say that I am happier today than I was back then. So I think of it as not that I was unhappy, I've just gotten happier. The happiness has increased. So first thing to do is just realize if you're somebody doing tons of things, maybe pay more attention to the things that you're doing and begin to identify, well, why are you doing that? What's the reason behind it? When I would start a new venture or start down a new path, I didn't think much about it other than I have an interest, I want to try it out, I'm going to go do it. I have to do it, I have to experience it. And that's okay, but if you keep on doing that and you recognize it, start to begin to pay a little bit more attention about what's the why. And maybe even, write it out. Why am I doing this? What's the purpose? So you have a better understanding. And as you do that more and more, you might be able to identify the theme for why you keep on trying these different things. And that may help you find what it is you're supposed to be doing a little bit quicker. Again, my goal is not to tell you exactly how to do it. It's to help you find the best way for you to figure these things out sooner than you would have if you never found this podcast. Eventually, you're probably going to figure it out. But if I can help you find it out 5 years, 10 years, 1 year sooner, and give you that much more time walking in your authentic life, then your life becomes better and the world becomes better because now we're getting your unique gifts and skills that you were created to bring to the world sooner. I wouldn't change my life, but if I would have found spirit, mind, body, and money 10 years ago, I can only imagine the impact that I could have had over the last 10 years as I was still figuring things out. And if I knew what I know now back then, I would have found it out sooner, which is what I'm trying to convey to you. So again, first thing, pay attention to why you're doing all of the things. Second thing is to look at all the things you're doing and be honest about what are the things that you really enjoy the most. And what are the things you're doing because somebody suggested it to you? And what are the things you're doing because you truly chose it? And you might be at a stage of your pursuit where you've kind of moved away from being influenced by others and you really are just being guided by your heart and your passions, and you're just doing everything that you want to do. Cool. But some of us may still be in a phase where we're getting influenced by others as we try to figure out our version of our life by borrowing from other people. So why are you doing it, and who is influencing it? And then as you look at the things that you're doing, I think your intuition is going to be a good guide here, your heart. But look and see if you can identify if the different tasks that you're doing or ventures that you're starting up, are they something that legitimately aligns with where you think you're supposed to be going? Or is this something that is just meant to teach you a skill? And that's kind of vague, but I think if it makes sense for you, it will make sense. And when it is time for it to make sense for you, it will make sense. An example for me would be, editing a podcast is not something that I should probably do for my whole career. It's learning a skill. What's the skill and what's the purpose? Well, first off, I had to do it to get the podcast going. The podcast is going to be my flagship content. I'm still going to do the daily notes, still going to do videos, but Life Design Plus is going to be the content that I am known for first. That's going to bring everybody in, and the other things will come along. In order to understand how to, have a good podcast, I think understanding how to structure it, how to prepare it, how to edit it, that is all very helpful. So the podcast was a hybrid. It was part of what I'm supposed to be doing, but it was part of learning a skill to make me better at that. And then when the time is right, I can delegate those editing skills to somebody else because I understand through the process of editing the podcast and getting it out there what it takes to put a good podcast out. I've learned that, which will help me in the interview process and in the subject matter and the distribution. Once I learn that lesson, I don't need to go any further. Building a community, the thought process of building a community for a entrepreneur client, while I went through and I actually set up a circle, which is the community platform we use for the AGC for advisors. I set up a circle, had it all built out, and I learned that process, but it wasn't for that. It was to come over and join Taylor to create a community for financial advisors, which I ended up not having to build all that because we had a team to do that. But had I not gone through that process, I would not have been able to learn how to, help the AGC become the great community that it is. So the community for entrepreneurs, that was just a means to learn what I needed to learn for what was coming down the road that I didn't know at the time. So it's kind of hard, and looking back, it's always going to be easier to identify those things. But if you can take time and evaluate what it is you're doing now, or go back to some of the things you've done before and pivot it away from, and see, did you catch the learning that was meant to happen in there for you? And if not, what did you miss that now will help you going forward? So unfortunately, there's not like a workbook exercise I can give you to help you figure out, are you discontent? And is that discontentment from a lack of walking in your authentic life or knowing your purpose? I think my hope for today's episode is to put this idea in your head, for you to reflect upon it, to see, well, am I doing all these things because they're helping me, or am I doing all these things because I'm trying to find out what it is I'm supposed to do? And maybe this discontentment means I'm close. So if I'm close, let me look more closely at the things I'm doing and the things I've done to help figure out what is it I'm supposed to be doing. It might bring more clarity to you. And maybe it's not. Maybe this episode ends up being a complete waste for you, and for that I apologize. But I don't know. I felt like this was the episode I was supposed to do today, and I don't argue with source as it puts things in me. The daily notes, what it tells me to write about, I write about. I don't argue with it. So this may only make sense for one of you today in 2024, but maybe somebody's watching this in 2026 and it clicks and it makes sense, and that's okay. Which is why I do different episodes every week, so that I catch everybody where they might be over time. So that's it. So discontentment. Discontentment does not, in my definition of discontentment, does not mean unhappy. It means it is a lack of contentment internally, subconsciously, because you're not walking in the authentic life that you are supposed to be walking in. And your higher power is trying to get you there by giving you these ideas and these clues and leading you down different paths to ultimately find out where you're supposed to go. Again, spirit, mind, body, money. I don't know if I get here if I don't go through all of those different phases that you look back over the last 8 or 9 years, and it looks like I was all over the place, and I was. I enjoyed every moment of it. I was not unhappy, but it was discontentment of trying to find my lane, my purpose, and the place that I could make the greatest impact. It was that discontentment that I wasn't there that was leading me to all those things that would lead me to where I sit right here today. And for some of you, that may be what you're battling. And if not, maybe you're not battling it right now, but maybe it will come in the future. If I was listening to this 12 years ago, it would not have resonated with me because I wasn't there yet. I was still in the learning phase of being a financial advisor that I had to go through first to then be able to be a financial advisor that brings something different to the profession. So just keep this idea of discontentment and what I think it means in the back of your head. It may make more sense for you in the future, or you may be there today. All right, that's it for today's episode. Remember, go check out the episode with Lindsay Bell. Go check out the episode with Tyrone Ross. Bonus episode coming at the end of the month. Next week, I'm talking through the 4 Agreements, a short but very powerful book. I'm excited to bring that to the podcast as well. And with that, I will let you get to your day. I want to thank you as always for joining me on my pursuit. It is an honor to be a part of yours, and let's keep pursuing.